In all of the discussions lately about making Star Wars Battlefront 3 happen, I've seen very little in the way of actual discussions about what people would actually like to see in a Battlefront 3 if it was to be made, and so I thought I'd throw my hat into the ring as to what I would like to see and how I'd like to see things done. In short, I essentially just want the basics of each era, so the core maps and the main cast of heroes and villains from the prequel trilogy, original trilogy and sequel trilogy. So for maps, you'd be looking at the likes of Naboo, Kamino, Geonosis, Kashyyyk, Coruscant, Mustafar, Mos Eisley, Death Star 1, Yavin 4, Bespin, Hoth, Death Star 2, Endor, Takodana, Starkiller Base, Crate, Pisana, and Dakar. Now you could naturally add a few more, especially from the sequels. And then for heroes, I'd want Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Ahsoka, Dooku, Grievous, Maul, Ventress, Luke, Han, Leia, Chewie, Lando, Vader, Palpatine, Boba Fett, Bossk, and maybe Dengar. And then for the sequels, I'd want to see Kylo Ren, Phasma, Hux, Rey, Finn, and Poe. So that would be a grand total of about 18 maps and 24 heroes, and that's not including the classes and all of the weapons, cosmetics, and all the rest that goes along with it. So for a launch of the game, that definitely seems a bit of a tall order. But if DICE was to be making this game, especially with all of the heroes that they've already done, I feel like that might help speed up the process quite considerably, since they will have all of those assets on file anyway. It would of course still take a long time to make Luke Skywalker, despite having them making him twice already, but it should be quicker than making someone else entirely. Now, like I said, I know that is a bit of a tall order, but I feel like with where we ended up with Star Wars Battlefront 2, essentially having everything from all of the films, I feel like you can't make a Battlefront 3 and not essentially have all of those things that we got in Battlefront 2, and maybe sprinkle in a little extra with the likes of Ahsoka, Ventress, and a couple of more maps. Now, of course, we've had tons of Star Wars over the last few years, especially thanks to TV, so you could naturally add a lot of things from the likes of The Mandalorian, like Din Djarin himself and Moff Gideon as new heroes, and then Navarro and maybe Mandalore as a map, and all the rest of it that we see in the show. But like I said, the core launch elements of a Battlefront 3 for me just need to focus on the main 9 episodic films, and then from that point they can then branch out into the likes of Solo, Rogue One, The Mandalorian, Kenobi, The Book of Boba Fett, The Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, The Bad Batch, and so on. There's obviously so much content that they can draw on from all of these shows and films, so there is absolutely no doubt that content would be added for years and years to come, if of course it was successful. Now, all of that content is pretty standard. So in terms of things like game modes that I want to see, Heroes vs Villains absolutely has to come back. I feel like that's a core staple of Battlefront franchise. But my personal favourite mode is Galactic Assault. Just having that linear story-based mode for me is so much fun, and it is easily the best mode in Battlefront 2 for me. So I would absolutely love to see that return. And then having Supremacy but having it actually space to ground would be really cool if they could pull that off. I think it would be really challenging, but by no means impossible. Even if they couldn't do actual space to ground, just having air to ground, essentially like Supremacy but without the cutscene and you can go up to the ship at any point, would be so cool. And then finally, I really would like to see Galactic Conquest make a return to the franchise. I feel like that's something that's been heavily requested for the 2 DICE games, but obviously we never got to see that. Obviously it would have to be single player because an online Galactic Conquest in the old sense just would not work. But I do have a really fun idea as to how they could essentially make an online Galactic Conquest and play that into seasons of content. But I'm going to cover that in a future video because I feel like it's a whole discussion in itself. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel so you don't miss out on that. But that is essentially everything I would like to see from a Battlefront 3 launch. Pretty much just the basics of every single episodic film in the Star Wars franchise. And then from that point, that's when you can really start to branch out into other things. Again, like the Clone Wars and Rebels and The Mandalorian. I know a lot of people might feel bored of the same old content, but I feel like with a lot of the maps they could do something different on these planets. But also you just can't not have a Battlefront game and not have the main cast of characters really. But that is going to be it from me today, guys. Let me know what you would like to see in the launch of a Battlefront 3 in the comments below. Thank you all very much for watching, and may the Force be with you always.